You know, if I had a nickel for every main Disney show character that ends up in a magical void to meet a god because of them sacrificing themselves in a really emotional scene, but, like, don't worry, they'll be back in 5 minutes or so, I'd have 3 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened 3 times, right? So, the Owl House is finally over, or, as some might say, over far too soon, and with it comes the end of an era for Disney animation. An era that started all the way back in 2012 with GravityFalls and its unforgettable smash hit seasons, capped off with what many consider to be a perfect finale. And you can't forget Amphibia, the little show that could. Together these 3 tend to be known as the big 3 of Disney TV animation, and they tend to be the ones to beat when comparing any new series, or even each other. So why not do that? Because I think these 3 finales are extremely interesting to compare and contrast, and maybe we'll figure out just which one reigns supreme. Let's do this. Now, there are many different factors that I think can be compared when you're talking about finales. Is it a good resolution to the series? All loose ends nicely wrapped in a neat bow, the audience given a satisfying goodbye? Does it connect well to the rest of the series? Has everything built up to this? And then of course you got characters. Do the characters end in satisfying places that make sense? Are they given a good send-off? What about the villain, if there is one? Do they have a satisfying defeat? And of course, is it a good episode in its own right? So, let's go with the golden oldie before anything else, eh? Let's talk about Weirdmageddon, because, damn, okay, this is a really incredible finale to a really incredible show. I don't think there's anyone that's going to deny that. We get to see the relationship of the Pines twins, no, not these ones, wrapped up really nicely. The show's biggest fans were rewarded with the pentagram finally being put to use. And then, of course, there was the defeat of one of my favourite villains of all time in media. A defeat that, well, I'll get to soon enough. Nothing like this had ever really been seen before from Disney, so it deserves its fair share of praise from that alone. It paved the way for everything we've had today from the other 2 shows. It wasn't without its issues, of course. Nothing is. In this case, the main problems people seem to have with GravityFalls ending is threefold. The pentagram didn't actually work. Stanley's memory being erased amounted to nothing and was undone within minutes. And Pacifica, who had gone through a lot of development and became a surprisingly important character over the past few episodes, seemed to have reverted back to her basic rich bully girl persona. Now, personally, the first one I have no issue with, and we'll get to that, but the other 2? Yeah, I can definitely see where people might be coming from having issues with them. But was hindsight 2020? Were these other 2 shows able to learn from what Weirdmageddon had done right and wrong when making their own grand finales? Well, when it comes to the Owl House and Amphibia, weirdly enough, they seem to take more inspiration from each other? Despite releasing less than a year apart, the 2 climaxes have a shocking amount of similarities. Like, there's some really identical plot beats here, just a little out of order. Our main characters crumbling into nothingness in front of their friends, then going and meeting the deity that's been watching the events of the show play out, gaining god powers from that deity and using it to fight off the main antagonist, who has powered up and become more of a corrupting Lovecraftian parasite, with the help of their 2 friends and the other redeemed blue main antagonist. And let me just say, if it sounds like I'm complaining, I'm not, because these are some great plot beats, and the shows are different enough that they both still work really well. I just find it rather funny is all. I admit, I think Amphibia does suffer the most when it comes to the whole making sure everything builds up to this part. And the strangest part is, it's the only one here that didn't get shortened. It's actually pretty clumsy when it comes to the introduction of the concept of Anne's sacrifice. Similarly with the core and its final plan with the moon, that was just never hinted at previously. I guess because they wanted to have an air of mystery before the finale as to why it was falling from the sky? Question mark? The Owl House actually does just as well as GravityFalls in this regard, which, considering its shortening, is no mean feat. There's plenty of callbacks to previous episodes, everything from the earliest of episodes to the fan favourites, to even the least well-regarded ones. The hero's return was via a character that we know of, and in a realm we've visited before, and the antagonist's final plan was even set up previously, kind of, and makes a bit more sense than Amphibia's. Speaking of the villains actually, this seems as good a point as any to talk about them. And since this is the finale, the all-important question is, how will they be dealt with? And you know what? I'm not going to beat around the bush for this one. This is where GravityFalls shines like the sun. When it comes to taking a nigh invincible antagonist and having them be defeated in a way that makes sense, I really can't think of a better example than Bill Cipher. If you're watching this and don't know Alex Hirsch's story on the background of this, whew, boy. When we were writing the GravityFalls finale, we were brainstorming ways to defeat Bill. We forgot to erase the whiteboard, so for months anyone visiting Disney would have seen a large chart titled How to Kill God. And I think that How to Kill God brainstorm worked out very well for them, with Stan and Bill's confrontation being one of the singular best scenes in a series with a lot of incredible scenes. Which may or may not be because Bill and Stan are by far my favourite characters from Gravity Falls, but I digress. Let's keep at it with the villains then, shall we? If Bill's defeat was a 10 out of 10, I'd probably put Belos's as like an 8, because it's still very good. After a genuinely awe-inspiring final attempt at victory via the possession of the Titan, I think his talk with Luz is excellent, one last attempt to manipulate after a whole series worth of it. And the fact that she just coldly stares him down the whole time, whew, it's absolutely brutal and I adore it. I do think that the final stomping from Rain, Ida and King does bring it down though, as it kinda lowers the intensity of the scene, as well as the fact that there are characters with far more personal connection to Belos. Hunter. Still great though. Then you have the core from Amphibia, which, to be entirely honest, yeah, it really doesn't compare to these two. After detaching from Marcy, it's about as generic an evil force as you can get. The army it sends after the Calamity Trio is cool, and I love how they're based on prehistoric insects to give them a very otherworldly feel, but, like, come on. You know they're just acting as punching bags, cannon fodder for the girls to show off their new powers. Even they call it out. And of course, its final death is pretty underwhelming. Anticlimactic, you could even call it. No final confrontation with Marcy, not even any real final words. But you know, in this case, it's because the core is not the focus of the scene. Anna's. And holy shit, it is still an incredible scene. In fact, let's go over Anne and the rest of the protagonists, shall we? In part because we've just gone over the villains, and in part because I want to give Amphibia some praise because I feel like I've just been dunking on it for a while. In this case, talking about the singular main characters, it feels almost unfair for Gravity Falls. Dipper is pretty much a side character in his own show's finale. I wouldn't say it's something I'm opposed to at all. One of Gravity Falls' weaknesses is that its side characters are amazing, but just not given enough time. But it does feel pretty funny to contrast. The Stans are the one to defeat Bill, and Mabel is the one who gets all the big emotional moments when the action is over. Meanwhile, you contrast that with Luz and Anne? Good God. They're over here getting anime power-ups and beautifully sacrificing themselves and speaking to the gods of their world and connecting one more time to their weirdo found family, and oh, it's so good! Okay, but really, Anne's sacrifice is so heartfelt, and it might sound weird to say, but innocent? And then her final form, the way she looks so incredibly powerful but also so fragile, so delicate, like her own body can't contain the energy. Combine that with one of many incredibly emotional moments to come with Sprig, we will get to the rest, and you get this masterful scene. If you're going to actually kill off your protagonist in a Disney show, you'd better do it right, and Matt, my man, you did exactly that. That being said, I think the star of the show here is Luz. To be specific, Luz and her relationship with King and Ida and how it all comes to a head in Watching and Dreaming. First of all, I adore her Titan Luz form. The dark, sunken eyes, the horns and claws and fangs, the purple and black clothes. They're all things you might see on the design of a villain or monster, but not the main protagonist, not the hero, and yet that suits Luz so perfectly. She rolls with it amazingly. I adore how it looks so similar to Harpy, Ida and King too. See, it's much more difficult to describe a good thing than a bad thing, because there's only so many adjectives of amazing you can use. But, well, the scene of the three of them teaming up together, Ida and Luz drawing a magic circle in the air, the first thing she tried to teach her to do, but ultimately never could. Luz and King weighing together, all in a voice that sounds so much more happy, something we've not seen for most of season 3. The music! Nothing's ever gonna beat the GravityFalls theme blasting during Weirdmageddon, but like, this is definitely second place. Sorry Amphibia, the No Big Deal remix is awesome too. Just a pure rush of emotion. Is happy chills a thing? Because it's the closest example to what I felt here. Possibly my favourite moment in the finale, and thus the entire show. But, alright, let's close this off with a bang, shall we? And by that, I mean figure out which of these three closed off with the biggest bang. This is sadly where the Owl House will fall short. And make no mistake, it's not a bad ending. Considering the time restraints they were given, the fact that everything was so coherent and emotional is testament to the show's amazing writers. However, there's clearly so much they wanted to do. The relationships of Hunter and Willow, Ida and Rain, Darius and Aldor even. Not to mention Philip, Caleb and Evelyn's backstory, the Collector's siblings, Luz's plan to leave the Demon Realm forever. Heck, I know Kikimora isn't a favourite or the most important, but the last time we saw her last episode, she was still causing chaos in her mech against the Hexide squad. Also, apparently there's this whole diplomacy and shared schools between the Demon Realm and Human Realm now, which is pretty much revealed in the background. Then again, you know, we always have
now that's a spin-off I'd watch.
to cling to. But yeah, GravityFalls and Amphibia take this one. The former? There's just something really special about the bus ride back home. Dipper's little speech is absolutely wonderful, but it's the music that really ties this scene together. Ironically enough, I think the final couple of minutes before the credits are best enjoyed by anyone except its supposed target audience of kids, because it evokes such a strong, heartfelt feeling of bittersweet nostalgia for the summers of childhood. If you're as connected to the show as so many of its fans are, then yeah, you might have to choke back tears the first time, or maybe every time, you watched this. But, well, if we're talking about bittersweet goodbyes, you really can't get better than Amphibia. I've always been of the opinion that bittersweet is perhaps the singular most underrated emotion in media, if that makes any sense at all. You can get such a deep emotional gut punch from a bittersweet moment or ending that, when it's done right, a purely happy or sad ending just can't come close to. And if you've seen The Hardest Thing, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The Funny Frog Show has a lot of issues, I'm never going to deny that. But throughout, there's always been a really strong core of the found family between Anne and the Planters. And for such a silly show, it seems surprisingly adult in the way it lets these characters grieve and try to comfort each other, not wanting to let each other go. And the crying, all the crying. The writers know how important this moment is, and it really does sit with you. They've had such an incredible adventure, but it really is over now. And then you have Sasha and Grime, who give me one of my favourite moments in the entire show. Definitely closer to the sweet end of Bittersweet, but I love them all the same, oh my god. So, what have we learned today? Why yes, dear viewer, you are correct that less than 1% of people watching this are subscribed, and it would be awesome if they liked, commented and subscribed, but I'm more referring to what we learned in the video itself. Specifically, I'd argue that each of these shows manages to excel in their finales in different ways. GravityFalls has the best defeat of the antagonist, as well as the best setup, the feeling that everything has led to this. The Owl House has the best final battle, and the best last hurrah for the main characters and their relationships. Amphibia has the best goodbye to the world and its characters, as well as the best epilogue out of the three, though that one's close, I'll give you that. Do you have a different opinion? I'd love to hear your thoughts on all 3 endings in the comments, and, you know, the whole subscribe and like thing, that would be awesome. Until next time, friends,